There's a moment, quiet, almost unsettling, when you realize that growth is no longer your biggest problem. Maintaining it is, because reaching a certain level on YouTube feels like breaking through a wall, but staying there, continuing to rise without slipping back into inconsistency, requires a completely different mindset, one that goes beyond learning the system and into mastering discipline. Because at this stage, small mistakes don't just affect one video, they ripple across your entire channel, subtly shifting how your content is perceived, how it's distributed, and how your audience responds over time. And this is where the concept of Kengchi, consistency at scale course, becomes critical, because it's one thing to create a few good videos, but it's something entirely different to do it repeatedly, under pressure, with expectations building, with an audience watching. And this is where many creators begin to struggle, not because they've lost their ability, but because the stakes feel higher, the margin for error feels smaller, and every decision carries more weight than it did before. Now imagine this scenario. You've had a series of successful uploads, your channel is growing, your audience is expanding, and everything seems to be aligning, but then one video underperforms. Not drastically, but enough to create doubt. And suddenly, that doubt starts to influence your next decision. You hesitate, you overanalyze, you try to fix things that might not even be broken, and this reaction, this shift in mindset, can be more damaging than the underperformance itself, because it disrupts your flow, your confidence, your ability to create with clarity. This is where emotional control becomes just as important as technical skill, because YouTube is not just a platform of strategy, it's a platform of psychology. And not just the audience's psychology, but yours. Your ability to stay consistent in your approach, to trust your process even when results fluctuate, to avoid overreacting to short-term changes while staying responsive to long-term patterns. And this balance is incredibly difficult to maintain, especially when your results are visible, measurable, and constantly changing. At the same time, however, there's a deeper layer of growth happening beneath the surface, something that doesn't always show up immediately in your analytics. And that is audience loyalty. Because as your channel matures, your viewers are no longer just random clicks. They're returning, they're recognizing your content, they're developing a connection with your style, your perspective, your way of delivering value. And this loyalty becomes one of your strongest assets because it stabilizes your performance. It creates a foundation that supports your growth, even when individual videos fluctuate. But here's the challenge. Loyalty must be maintained. It must be earned continuously. Because audiences are not static, their interests evolve, their expectations rise, and what once impressed them might no longer be enough. And this means that even as you build a loyal base, you must continue to improve, to refine, to push your content forward in ways that keep it engaging, relevant, and aligned with what your audience values. Now bring this back to the question of frequency. And it becomes even more strategic, because at this level, every upload is not just about reaching new viewers, it's about maintaining your relationship with existing ones. And this requires a balance between staying present and not overwhelming your audience. Because while frequent uploads can increase visibility, they can also dilute attention if the content doesn't maintain a high standard. And this is why many advanced creators adopt a more controlled schedule, one that prioritizes impact over volume. And then there's the factor of content fatigue, something that affects both creators and audiences, because repetition, even when it's effective, can eventually lead to diminishing returns. And recognizing when your content is approaching that point requires awareness, not just of your analytics, but of your own creative instincts, your ability to sense when something feels overused, when it needs to evolve, when it needs a new angle or a fresh perspective. At the same time, however, evolution must be managed carefully, because sudden, drastic changes can disrupt the connection you've built with your audience. And this is where gradual refinement becomes key. Introducing new elements slowly, testing variations, allowing your content to grow organically rather than forcing it into a completely different direction. And this approach allows you to maintain stability while still progressing. And yet, even with all this structure, all this awareness, there will always be moments of uncertainty. Videos that don't perform as expected, decisions that don't lead to immediate results. And this is where long-term thinking becomes essential. Because growth on YouTube is not determined by a single video or even a few videos, but by the overall trajectory of your channel, the patterns that develop over time, the consistency of your approach, and your ability to adapt without losing direction. So as you continue forward, the question evolves once again from how many videos should I upload daily to how can I sustain high quality output over time without losing momentum or burning out? Because that's the real challenge at this level. Not just growing, but sustaining growth, not just achieving success, but maintaining it in a way that is both effective and sustainable. And in that realization, something changes. Not just in how you create, but in how you think. Because now you're no longer focused on short-term gains. You're building something long-term. Something that can withstand fluctuations. Something that can evolve without collapsing. And that shift, from chasing growth to sustaining it, is what separates those who rise quickly and fade from those who continue to grow steadily, consistently, and with increasing confidence. And when you reach that point, when your focus shifts from immediate results to long-term stability, from reacting to planning, from guessing to understanding, that's when your journey transforms once again, not into something easier, but into something more controlled, more intentional, more aligned with how the platform actually works. And that alignment is what allows you to continue moving forward, not just faster, but smarter, building something that doesn't just grow, but lasts.